get a small team together of people, like-minded people, who are passionate about your film.
You write from your heart and passion and instinct first and foremost. You're going to tap into some universal stuff.
Don't show guns.
Comedy tells the truth, and specifically it tells the truth about people.
There's a lot of talented people that never make it because they don't understand the business.
There's often a gap between what you've planned and how it turns out. Dorothy Fadiman joins us with advice on how to be flexible as a director. Since 1976, Dorothy Fadiman has been producing documentaries on social justice and human rights. She's an Academy Award nominee and an Emmy winner. Dorothy, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about keeping yourself involved in every aspect.
Well, I've been making films for 40 years now. And from the very first film, I was aware that other people had ideas about what they wanted the film to do, what they wanted the film to be, where they wanted it to go. And I didn't know what I was doing, so I basically gave away almost all of my power. And I ended up with a film that was nothing of what I originally intended. So like so many things in filmmaking, I learned the hard way. So I reclaimed the film, I rebuilt it, and from that day on, and I've made 30 films now, I keep recognizing when it's slipping away, when it's someone else's wants something from me, when someone else wants something from the film. And I just call it reclaiming the film, because you are the filmmaker.
How do you put your foot down with people? What's the best way to do that without offending?
What you need, okay, I can only speak about what I've done. I can't say what someone else needs to do, but what I've done is go ahead, often without full support, and then show what I've discovered or put together to the people I'm working with. And I can give an example, which I think is a really good example, which I was making a film about one school, and everybody in the school, it's a beautiful school, progressive, successful school in every way that you measure success. The kids, they're happy, and they wanted that film to be about that school. But when I began to have feedback screenings, people said, but what about this, and what about that, and what about the cyclone fences, and what about the homework? No one in that school really wanted me to go to other schools. So I just stopped production, and on my own, I went to other schools, public schools all over the country, and then I brought back what I'd done, and we ended up with a primetime PBS special. The first half hour is the school that we originally intended, and the second half hour is 8 public schools around the country, and it worked. But what I had to do was break away from the original idea and most of the original people in order to develop it.
So it's all about having the confidence of knowing in your heart that this is what you want to do, and don't let anybody step on you.
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly it. Would you like another example?
Absolutely. Keep going, Dorothy. That's a great story. I love
my film. I was making a film about a woman who'd suffered a severe spinal cord injury, and she was told by the doctors that she would never move again voluntarily from the shoulders down. And as I was making it, I noticed that her husband was over to the side, paying attention, not really saying anything, but listening. And I realized at some point that I had to at least begin to speak with him. When I did begin to speak with him, I realized that he had been with her, which I didn't know at first, at every step along the way. And so when the film finally reached its maturity, it was a love story. It was about them. It was about how they worked together. And it was about how the community supported them and her. But originally, and sometimes this is necessary, I was going to make a film about this amazing woman, that she was starting to walk again, even though she was told she would never move. And that was the original story.
And then it turned into a love story instead of a story of survival. At what point
Yes.
during the filming or during the production um, did it hit you, or does it tend to? Do you tend to realize, hey, this is the story, not this?
Right. Now, that's a really good question. I trust my intuition. And I was literally watching him watch us. And I could feel that he was not only observing and listening, because he wasn't on camera at all yet then. We were 2/3 of the way through the film. But that he was also giving us a quality of energy through his intention to watch her and support us, that I realized that he'd been there since the beginning, and it was I who hadn't included him yet. And as soon as I invited him to be interviewed, the film blossomed.
It took on a whole new life. That's interesting because a lot of people tend to get locked into their original thought, and they don't want to sway off of it. But it goes to show you that you can actually take what you know, the ball of clay, I guess would be a good way to put it, and then it turns into not the bowl you made. Maybe that bowl has some different, a different look about it.
What I saw you do when I got the ball, I just thought of the wheel going round and round. And if you keep your hands on the wheel and let your hands rise, what you'll get is a vase, not just a bowl. And it's not better or worse, but the way I work, it's usually will hold literally and figuratively more flowers.
I want to touch quickly on your book also. The book's called Producing with Passion. And the book, I just got the book, so I actually haven't been able to look at it, but I perused through it, and it touches on a lot of what you spoke of today, plus more. Can you just talk a little bit about what's in the book that people can expect?
Well, I would say one of the things we haven't talked about, which is the heart of the book, is the way I discuss and describe and support people in doing interviews. Very often people go into an interview with a series of questions. Ask the questions one after another and hope they get the answer they either expected to get or will get an interesting answer. One of the keys for me to interviewing is you go in with the questions, but very early on in a good interview, you set the questions aside and you let the interviewee take over the interview, because they usually know, either intellectually or even intellectually or emotionally, what they have to say that's unique, what they have to say that's theirs. And for me, that's what producing with passion means, is to start to listen with your heart and with a part of you that's truly intuitive to what they want to say, not what you wanted to have them say. And that's where the magic starts. It becomes an intellectual conversation to begin, but it becomes more of a dance as it evolves.
Mm-hmm. And this is, you're talking mainly documentaries. That's what you produce. Do you think it carries over into like regular films that's not a documentary?
Yes, I very, very much think that. And one of the variables, whether it's a documentary or whether it's any other kind of film, is whether or not there's any narration. And if there is narration, what role the narration plays. Many people feel that narration takes away the soul of the film or the spirit of the film. I actually feel the opposite. I feel that the narration can, I mean, it may or may not, but can hold the hand of the viewer so that the narration says, well, let's look over here. The narrator doesn't tell you what to see or what to think, but it does suggest where to look.
Dorothy, I want to thank you for joining us today. Very informative, great advice.
Thank you for the questions and the opportunity.